We have a very, very special treat for you today, especially the next upcoming segment. And to sum up what's going to happen, I'd like to refer to a quote by Bill Gates. Information technology and business are becoming inextricably interwoven. I don't think anybody could meaningfully talk about one without referring to the other. Our next speaker is, in my opinion, one of the greatest entrepreneurs and CEOs in the United Arab Emirates and the region. He has transformed an industry in under a decade. Our next speaker was able to take 40% market share of the largest player in the network. Please help me welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Du Telecom, Osman Sultan. Thank you.
I'll try to. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it's really a pleasure. It's very refreshing to be here because of the nature of the event. Young entrepreneurs, people that are always at the edge of what's going on. So I want first to thank the organizers that really wanted me and here. That's really a pleasure. Now, because as well of the audience, what is very refreshing is as well very challenging, because I'm sure some of you are saying, okay, what is this guy who seems like, you know, a veteran when we read in the time that he was starting to work in the telco industry, and we know that the telco industry are, you know, usually dinosaurs and big entities that are. What can we learn from this guy that is has been always in this kitchen? And that's a very legitimate question. So, in order for me to try to biase and not address this, I start by saying that I will not have the pretension of giving you something where you would learn, but in order for you not to feel that this is a complete waste of your time, what I'm suggesting is that using the all this time where I have been seeing some transformation and take off in a helicopter view and show you some of the trends of what has been happening and where you, in what you are doing, probably fit. So, and for this, I'm going to start really from really the basic, because this is the way that people are seeing it. We are in a world that does not stop changing. And just as a reference for this, we have, when I was a teenager and when we were having very excited and passionate discussions, the keywords were completely different themes. These were the keywords of the industrial world. You know, it was capital, manufacturing, land, labor, different things. Of course, today, we are in a completely different world when we see our kids and when we see our teenagers and when we see our young generation speaking. It is different themes that are emerging. But a change never stopped. And the only difference is the pace of this change. When change is in a normal pace, we consider this evolution. And by the way, this is completely in our DNA, because we are born kids and then we grow up. So this is something we factor in. When change becomes a little bit faster, we feel this as a disturbance. Basic examples, when the airplane moves fast, or the altitude of the airplane moves faster, the pilot feels the need to tell you, in order to reassure you, because you're starting to feel worried, we are going in a zone of turbulence. So we feel it as turbulence. But what happened is just, you know, it's a matter of pace. Now, the interesting thing, when the pace of change starts to disturb the way we are doing things, it becomes a disruptive change, and then we feel it as a crisis. This is not only in the space of digital in which we live. In economy, when the flows of money start to change and disrupt the current change, we speak about economical crisis. In the propagation of a virus, because viruses always move, if it starts moving faster and disrupt the normal order, we speak about pandemias of, viruses. When the tectonic plates of Earth move in a faster pace than normal, although this is really, we are talking geological units, and now then we speak about earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. So this is to tell you that this is the way things are happening. But in order for me to illustrate this in a very simple way, in something that is relevant to what you do, and I want you to think that I want to pick up a YouTube video. I borrowed a YouTube video that we have just to show not the quantum of change, not the quantitative part, but just the qualitative type of change that we are going through, and where all of you are positioning yourself. This is a qualitative change. This has nothing to do. This is a change in the behavior, fundamental behavior of human being that is induced. Look where she's pressing the reset button of an iPad. Amazing, the intuitive intelligence that exists in humankind. And now happiness. This is the mother saying Steve Jobs has coded a part of her operating system. That's a very strong thing, because I can tell you that the pace of change is something none of us control. And I will try during the course of this presentation to show you how things are. I could give you numbers about what's happening in an internet minute to show you and how this is evolving, if we want to use numbers. I'll just give one number. We are told as an industry that at the end of 2015, if we want to watch all the videos circulating on the internet all over in 1 second, it will require 5 years of our life. If someone wants to watch all what's going on from videos are we ready for this? Are we ready as telecom operators for this type of infrastructure? Are the ecosystems ready? Today, not. But they are being built, probably not in a predetermined, deterministic manner, but they are being built little by little, little by little, by the momentums that are existing and in which all of you, here and there, bits and pieces, are contributing. And that is the beauty of what's going on. Now, what's happening in this new behavior are induced, new technology are bringing new capabilities. Just to give an example, when I was a kid in Beirut, when I was started to go out, at the age of 14, 15, something I still remember, if I go to play, whatever, in a football field with my friends, I needed, after we finish, to just go find a grocery store, to call my parents, where the phone was not in the apartment, but probably in the building. I know that some of you are saying, but how old is this guy? They didn't even, he's before the, no. So to do this, that's a behavior. Of course, today my kids, if I tell them this, would be completely surprised. When I when I was arguing with my kid that he shouldn't have a TV in his room, I told him, he said, you didn't have it. I said, we didn't have a TV, we didn't have this. So at one point, you didn't have at one point, this was years ago, at one point he said, what do you have in your room? Just a bed? So it's difficult to explain to him, no, you had books, you had games, you had other games, Scrabble, whatever, Monopoly, because what did you have in your room? Just a bed? If there was no PlayStation, etc., etc., etc. So that's the change in behavior. These new capabilities inducing new behavior are bringing new players. And this is what a better audience to start talking about new players. New players that are disturbing. New players are bringing new business models. And believe me, no one better than the telco know the disturbance that is, the disruption that is happening in the business models. Just give you an example, SMS revenues, WhatsApp. I'll let you figure the math. And this is bringing new business flows, because you will see that this concept of flow is very important in what I'm saying, new business flows. Are we witnessing new civilization models? And here, this is the helicopter view. I want to take it to even a little bit more. I believe that actually this story is as old as civilization itself. Very basic. It's start with a way of transporting. Way of transporting means content can be channeled, and this content is used for applications, lifestyle, experience. You're starting to think, yes, okay, content, whatever, video content, and then think of the time where we cut trees in the forest. We channel them on the rivers. It goes to factories and it becomes chairs and tables and whatever things we use. Think of this model. This has been, the modus operandi that didn't change. Until now, we are still into this. The only difference that we have today is that from a model that we know between content, channels, and in the content, I can tell you, this is where you have publishing, the music industry, the film industry, whatever, the newspapers, all these players that existed, channels, you have the telcos, the broadcasters, all the distribution with the logic of distribution, with the logic of broadcasting, and the devices at the end where you had everything from the phone until the camera until etc. And the part that was very forgotten in this equation, the users. And all these players used to exist in what I call the unshared certainties. When I started in telco, we never felt the need, the pure telco people never felt the need to talk with the IT industry, to talk with the content industry, because we know how it works, and usually regulators are issued from these same bodies and entities. So these unshared certainties. How the things change? New models of aggregation started to exist. New business models. It is the iTunes model that transformed the music industry, not the iPod. It's the iTunes model that completely disrupted the music industry that is hundreds of years old, not the device or the iPod. And the third level that happened, what I call the three screens coming together, which induced an exponential growth in things that are happening. And the most important, sorry for this, the most important, in my opinion, is that the most important player in the equation started to become users. How many of you are working on equations where if you want to rationalize the value that you are creating, you wouldn't know the valuation of companies in this new internet space? Is it by EBITDA multiples? Is it by revenue multiples? Is it? It's very often this is the database of users I am having, and more it will be the capability of how much can I extract information on these users. This is becoming not only a contributor, the #1 player in the content space is a company that doesn't produce any content, YouTube. It's a company where they're just collecting the content and being able to build a business model around that, monetizing what you are providing. So it is really bringing the individual at the heart of the screen. All this ecosystem is making that we are moving from what I call the unshared certainties to a beautiful situation of shared uncertainties. Yes, we are sharing. Yes, every day I see people coming from the app space, from the content space, from the IT space, from the media space, etc. But business models are not very clear. It's still in, a give and take trial. Revenue models are not very clear. How we monetize, it's not very exciting, very, very fascinating intellectual exercise that all of you will have to go through. This is, and where the VC ecosystem has created a lot in inducing the right dynamic, the right financial ecosystem to be able to, So just imagine on that, due to this Maasai farmer or warrior, etc., you give him a feature phone, and this guy today will have communication capabilities as much as Ronald Reagan, when Ronald Reagan was the president of the most powerful state 25 years ago. Now change this phone, and by the way, this is Peter Diamandis, who is a very futuristic visionary who used this example. So I'm using him, quoting Peter. And give him a smartphone, and this same person at the most remote area on Earth will have access to knowledge and information equal to Bill Clinton, who was the president of the most, and having access, the guy who is supposed to have the most access to knowledge and intelligence as the president of the most powerful state. So this is the equation. This is the multiplication effect that we are living. Now, this construction of abundance model happened into phases. We started to go to the internet like we go in the library. This was the mid-90s, and I'm sorry if some of you feel, oh, but we have been in the story. I think framing it is an interesting thing. And then in the years 2000, we started to go to the internet like we go to a store. This was the beginning of the transactional, because the merchants discover how important is this footfall place. And then the real revolution in the middle of the years 2000, when people started to go on the internet like we go in a cafe. We started to go, This is the social networking that, in my opinion, is the real innovation, the real revolution that happened in this entire space. Of course, going along with this, the technology abilities, moving in the different generations of mobility, from 2G to GPRS, then 3G, then 3.5G, and technical people will list you 3.75G, and then now we are on the 4G, speaking about. So the ability of delivering more capabilities in moving and transporting objects, bigger and bigger objects. This contributed to this evolution. The interesting thing is that we are seeing a balance now, or a trade-off between depth, the Google model, where I go, and in Google, I have an expert, to breadth, to the breadth part, because my information comes from a larger and larger audience, which is, if we think about access to knowledge, has some trade-offs that we need to consider. Now, what happened, and you will see this, all the industries started to see convergence models. In telco, that were organized like this, we started to see the converged telecom. Media were usually organized about the 4 pillars: TV, print, radio, outdoor. Then it became all of a sudden digital media is bringing all this together. Phones, computers, on the device side, these are the smart devices. Then you have the app space, the IT and cloud. The interesting thing, these vertical businesses started to transform to become we witnessed what is happening? It moves to the enabler layers, to horizontal layers. You have people now working in infrastructure, and in my opinion, you will have even in the investment side, different investors that will invest in the in this infrastructure layer with different expectations on return, with more institutional investors. You have the access platform, digital distribution and payments, and I'm sure a lot of you will figure out that they are working in one of these layers more than others. E-commerce is more on the digital distribution and payment, etc. Content, applications, etc. And of course, more and more we see cybersecurity between the access and the infrastructure because of the legitimate requirements of states, etc., on cyber, on ensuring some levels of security, ensuring security for the individual, security for institutional, etc. And the interesting thing is that we will see this ecosystem moving to become what I call a whole ecosystem, and this space will become the forced passage to any brand in any industry that want to talk to consumer and enterprises. And you are today either on applications that are dealing with travel, with health, with commerce, with food, whatever. Because this digital space is becoming the real ecosystem enabling any brand to reach. And this is going more and more. So in my opinion, this is the way things are going to happen. Now, I'm starting to talk fast because these guys are starting to put me. So this is the way, and we hear about a city transforming. What better than here can we, in this city, because of the initiative of moving into a smart city. So few words on that. This is today the city. You have an infrastructure, be it as a fiber network, a mobile network, Wi-Fi, other networks. And you have a lot of smart applications that exist, be it from an airport at the immigration, be it from a hospital, etc., be it to buy and to sell. Now, the city tomorrow will look like this. You will have an infrastructure layers. You will have sensors all over, millions of sensors that will collect data, be it from a traffic light, from your car, from your office, from the lamppost, etc., on various things, sensors that will collect data on multiple things to be engineered. Then there will be a data collection, hosting, and analytics. Of course, there is the design part that is fundamental. And then the most important things, there will be a layer that will determine how all this data will be managed and governed. We are talking about centralized access, we are talking about security, we're talking about authentication, we're talking about access management, we're talking about payment methods, etc., in order to ensure that the proper governance framework is set. Then on that framework, a lot of players will then put what I call the application enablement. Open APIs do, for instance, will publish APIs, because the real system will come from people like you. The real smart applications that will exist, of course, will happen by governmental entities, will happen by players like Do or Etisalat, etc., but will happen mainly by third-party users. The deputy mayor of London was giving an example saying, in London we have hundreds of applications that exist on transport, but only a handful of this is provided by authorities of the government. All the others are people who were invented. Some are working, some are not working, some are making their people millionaires, others are making their people. So this is where innovation will start, on the last layer, people like you. Innovation happens by necessity. I needed to take a bucket and go to the water. Then I thought, why don't I bring the water to me? That started again. This is innovation happened by exploration. You create Silicon Valley as an ecosystem that allowed innovation to happen. This is the exploration environment that you create, but as well, innovation, real innovation happened by serendipity. This is the Facebook model which are accidental outcome of a game-changing fact. Now, on that, something I need to say, being connected in our world is more and more, in my opinion, a basic human right. Believe me, when I started making the statement, this was far of being obvious. I was the chairman in the International Telecommunication Union for the Arab World, a group, and I said, and people were, do you think really we have issues in our country, some, GDP challenge country, we have issues in more important basic rights, nutrition, schooling, healthcare, etc. I said, this is becoming a reality. I was talking at the time a basic human need. When I saw the impact of communication and being connected in the historical events that took place in the Arab world, I upgraded this because I strongly believe it's a basic human right today. And the second thing, we are moving from these unshared certainties to shared uncertainties. This is where I'm inviting you in your thinking to always think about an idea, its opposite, what are the stakeholders. A key word that you will hear me say more and more, the word conversation. Conversations between multiple stakeholders will need to happen in a more and more important way. Now, the last thing, before last, is the conditions precedent for a better tomorrow. We need fair and ethical practices in the governance of driving development. And of course, you have to balance always. And we will see the cursor doing a pendulum between openness and security, between privacy and intellectual copyright, etc. There is always, this conversation that will one day move more to this. If you talk to young people about privacy, they tell you, we want to be connected. We don't care about privacy, teenagers. At the different, then there are evolution. This is the fascinating thing about these conversations. Now, very quickly, where is the Arab world in this space? Well, of course, we love to think about the ancient times where we led intellectual and scientific pursuits. Then in the modern time, let me be very clear, we missed completely the Industrial Revolution time. In this region, for decades and decades, centuries, we did not invent technology, we did not develop technology. We were buyers and we were heavy users of technology. What's next? What's next is an act of faith, specifically relevant for me when I am with this audience, an act of faith that in the Arab world, this promise of a brave new world is a reality, and that the digital transformation will lead to positive transformation in this part of the world that is in really need of this positive transformation in our society. And the reason for me to do this, because I believe Generation Digital Arabia is out there. In the current situation, Generation Digital Arabia is here. These are these young entrepreneurs and very excited and passionate people. So I will finish by quoting what was one time at the site of Yahoo. They're saying there's a new master of the digital universe, you. We transformed it a little bit, and we call it the new universe, because it is now putting the individual, it's putting you at the heart of the equation. We have to build this with a lot of ambition, but with a lot of humility, because we need to learn. And with this, I thank you very much for listening to me, and I thank the organizers for this opportunity. Thank you.
I actually made a mistake during the introduction, and I corrected it on Twitter. 47%, not 43, whatever I mentioned. 47% market share to do in, might I add, under a decade, approximately 8 years.